Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start talking. Hello. Y'all did rather wonderful overall on your 2D games. Um, and we're about to leave the world of 2D behind. But don't fret, because basically everything you learned in 2D gets transferred over to 3D. That's kind of why we do it this way. Um, so before that, I did post this earlier, and I'm sure some of you clicked it, some of you didn't. Um, a lot of people complain about the fact that like C sharp and then for my other class that Lua and Python look really really alien. And I wanted to take this point to kind of show you guys a version that looks it's a language called Elixir, which is even worse. Um it's like the granddaddy of thanks, I hate it. So Elixir starts out, it can look pretty normal. And don't worry about understanding what this is, but you can kind of follow along. We've got this thing called def module, foobar, and def. Those are kind of your class and functions. So we kind of understand that. That's an if statement. We kind of understand that. That's an else statement. Okay. So we can kind of at least sort of follow along. But Elixir has, because it wants to be fancy, some extra operator things that are like this. And so you can replace lots of things with those. So we go from looking like this to looking like this, and it meaning the same thing. But wait, there's more. You can then add these things further, and further, and further. And in the end, what you end up getting is this. Nobody likes this. There should never be this many end brackets and parentheses ever in any language. Um, and that's not to say that C sharp isn't hard, and that's not to say that Lua or Python isn't hard. But that is to say that there's a lot of languages out there that are a lot more difficult. Um, C sharp, pretty much everything you read is going to look at least sort of like English, whereas if I was just given this, I wouldn't know how to use it. Like, to be entirely honest, I'd have to go look up how Elixir actually works. Um, so yeah, be aware that things can get really extra crazy. So, with that out of the way, and like I said, y'all did great on your 2D games as a whole. Um, I've left comments for some of you guys. I haven't left comments for a lot of you guys. I got sick over the weekend. I had D&D and then stress and everything, and so I basically passed out for half the weekend, and yeah, so we're here now. So I promise I will get comments to everybody so that everybody can kind of know what my thoughts were. Some of you guys I have already given, some of you I have not. Basically, if I haven't given you a comment, know that you did pretty good. That's probably about what it is. Um, and because I had a rubric, you can kind of see how I graded. Some of you may have been surprised that you got lower than what you were expecting because the rubric is a rubric. If you followed the rubric, you could actually get a pretty decent score without making a pretty decent game. Because the point is that I was grading on how well your game worked, but I was also more heavily grading on whether all of the components worked, if that makes sense. I wanted to make sure you guys had the skill to build a game rather than the game, you know. So, okay. Um, where is you and you? Okay, cool. So, what are we talking about today? Today we are talking about version control, GitHub. We'll talk about importing stuff into Unity. But the first thing I did want to talk about is, because some of you have probably decided to go look and see like how a 3D thing is built and what 3D happens, etc., etc., etc. And if you did, you're going to notice, and if Unity Hub decides it's going to open, okay, there we go. You're going to notice that there's more options than there are if you just have, You have these extra little things: universal render pipeline, high def, 3D. By default, your 3D is basically built in with the universal render pipeline. Um, so you are always going to want to pick either this 3D bubble or this universal, but 3D is going to be the one that you want. And if you kind of hover over, it's supposed to hover over and let you know. Okay, there we go. So this template uses the universal and the shader graph. Shader graphs are awesome. I'm not going to teach you how to use it, but you can find all sorts of cool tutorials on using them. However, it is a scriptable pipeline, which may be problematic for y'all. So this will kind of tell you how it's going to work. It's got sample stuff, etc., etc. It's got more stuff in it. Whereas the base 3D one, this is an empty 3D project that uses Unity's built-in renderer. Got it. That works great. That's all we need. So you can either pick URP or you can pick 3D. It's up to you, whichever one you want to choose. Let's put this someplace that makes sense. Desktop. Select. And don't feel like you have to follow along. This is just kind of to show you guys how this is going to look as far as difference goes. I really should have had one built, because we all know that my computer takes 8 years to open these things. So okay, while it's opening, we're going to switch over to talking about GitHub and version control. So if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say version control, one, we've got this document right here that will talk to us about it, but sorry. But basically, version control is this idea of, if you're used to Max or Maya, where you like increment your saves, so you have like 800 saves of the same thing at each different step, that's what version control is. It's just creating backups, more or less, so that if something goes completely wrong, you can back up to a previous version that's not wrong or not corrupted. And there's a few different ways to do this, and yeah, there's merging and things like that. Those of you that are programmers understand branching and merging, or at least you should. Those of you who aren't, maybe don't, and that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's not important. At least not yet. Not until you run into a problem. Then you can come find me and we can talk about it. So yeah, basically it's just creating backups and backups and backups. The other thing with version control, especially with modern version control, is that it creates, generally it's uploaded to the cloud, which means that it's easier to share with other people, and it's easier for you to just like download it from one computer to the other if you've got multiple working stations, or like I said, if you're working with multiple people. It's great. And so Unity has one built in called Unity Connect. I don't like Unity Connect. I will forever not like Unity Connect. It's done me dirty, and I just, not a fan. On top of that, if you've got a group, I think it's still the same way. If you've got a group bigger than 3 people, they require you to pay for it. So if you're working in a small studio, my small studio has 4 of us that are kind of full-time, and then a couple people that float in and out. It doesn't work for us because we don't got that kind of cash. So that's Unity Connect. If you've had other classes that have taught you how to use it, awesome. Go ahead and use it if that's what you want to use. It's not my favorite thing in the world. However, what we use is GitHub. And GitHub works great for us. Those of you who have had Scott on the programming side have probably heard him talk about how GitHub is awful and shouldn't be used. However, those of you who have had McDougal is like, GitHub is love. And there's truth to both of them, but it's the easy thing. So you could set up your own server and use Git or Tortoise or something like that. But GitHub's there for you. And as students, you have access to the education portion, which if you click should bring you to, everything that it gives you, and it gives you lots and lots of stuff. I highly suggest it. It gives you access to all sorts of things. Some of them are a little outdated, like Unity Student Plan. You don't, that's not really a thing anymore. You kind of, everybody gets that. But it also gives you things like it used to, let's see if it's still does. It gives you access, those of you who are in my level design, or not my level, you are in my level design class, my game scripting class, we use REPL.IT, which is kind of an online IDE, so it lets you program online with just about, with like 50 different languages, without you having to download all the extra stuff. So their pack, if you get the student developer pack, it lets you have, it's like has free for 3 months. So yeah, not that you don't have to pay for it. The hacker plan basically makes it private, or you can have private stuff, as long as you don't mind having public stuff. REPL's free and wonderful. Yeah, so it's got all sorts of things. Some things that you'll use, some things that you won't. You may have already had to download it for a different class. It's going to especially be helpful for those of you who are programmers. You're going to find lots of things in here that are really cool. Those of you who aren't programmers, this still might be helpful for you. Because again, it's got some really cool stuff in it. It's got a lot of stuff in it nowadays. So it's got a lot of stuff. So yeah, including AWS training, which technically NVC also does, but this is a free AWS starter. So yeah, so GitHub's good. GitHub's, it's free, and it lets you put things up to the cloud and then clone it down to anywhere else. It's great for working in groups, but it's also great for working alone, because you never know what's going to go wrong. So I'm going to ask you all to have GitHubs, whether you're working in a group or not, with your project on it. Because last year we had a couple people who managed to completely overwrite their project within like the last week of working on them. So they had to completely remake their projects and cry because there was no recovering them. But if they had GitHub, and if they'd kept their GitHub up like they were supposed to, then they could have just rolled their GitHub back and gotten the previous save, basically. Because, yeah, you do have to upload to GitHub. You have to, like, physically say, okay, so I like this version, let's push it to GitHub so that we can later think about it. So, yeah, that's kind of a thing. A caveat about this is that there's a couple files, or there's a lot of files that you don't really need. So if you know how to use git ignores, I suggest using a git ignore. This links to an actual one that works for Unity. This hasn't been updated since 2019, so I don't know if it actually works anymore. If you are working in groups, only one person can work in a scene at a time. If two of you work in a scene at the same time, and then both try to upload it to GitHub, it will throw an unholy error. And basically, there's a merge function, but it doesn't really work seamlessly. And the same thing goes with Connect, with Unity Connect. It doesn't work seamlessly to merge two, like, scenes together. So basically, one of you has to throw away all the work that you've done. So that's kind of the issue with that. Are we open over here yet? Oh, we are. Okay, so switching back to Unity. Unity. It looks like 2D, only with 3D. There's actually a button, some of you may have discovered this, that's actually in the 2D version as well, where it switches between 2D and 3D, and 2D and 3D. And we use the same kind of controls. You see you've got a sun. The cool thing about the sun, and we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but the cool thing about the sun is it's controlled by directional lighting. Now, you haven't really had to use lighting in 2D, so maybe some of you did. But if we rotate our sun, and you can either rotate using these guys or rotate using this, it should, let's see, there we go. It'll actually rotate the sun because we've got a default skybox, which means you can make it night, or you can make it day, you can, yeah, so you can go back and forth. And what's cool with this is that you can even set it to, you can code it so that it just rotates throughout, so you create kind of a day and night cycle, which is cool. I mean, yeah, I think it's cool. Whether you guys think it's cool or not is, I guess, your own opinion. So yeah. So just note that, yeah, it gets very dark when it's dark. So you might want to add stars or something like that to add extra light. So yeah, so this basically looks the same. It feels the same. There's nothing really different minus the fact that we're in an extra dimension. Now, the one thing that confuses people a lot of times is the way that Unity's axes work. So far we've only had to deal with X and Y. X being horizontal, so left to right, and Y being vertical, up to down. Now, for some programs, when you add a third dimension, Y gets a little funky. Because sometimes Y is no longer up and down, Y is now like back and forward, is your depth. Unity takes the smart approach, and so X is still your horizontal, Y is still your vertical, and Z is now your depth. So we've got this little widget up here, and that's kind of going to tell us. So we know X is this way, Y is this way, and if we start rotating around, if I click the right buttons, you're going to start seeing that we've got the Z axis, which is just meaning your depth. So that's an important thing to remember. That's an important thing to remember when you're worrying about importing models from like Maya and Max, is that Y is up and Z is that way. And you may have to import models more than once. You may have to say, okay, I imported it, oh, it's backwards, I need to import it again. I do it all the time. Even though I've done this now for years and years and years, I still tend to import it backwards, thinking that it's supposed to go one way. Because the problem is that, you export them to Substance Painter one way, and then they've got to go into ZBrush a different way, and then they've got to go into Unity a completely different way, and sometimes it's just trial and error. So, yeah. So that's kind of all I wanted to say about what's inside of here, because literally it looks the same, it acts the same, you're going to set it up the same, it's just now 3D instead of 2D. So does that kind of make sense? I'll take silence as a yes. The other thing that's a little important is we do have this little widget here, and you're going to see it changes things a little weird. And that's because those of you who are artists are going to understand this better. You have an option of orthographic, basically orthographic and perspective modes. So, or isometric and perspective modes. So, if you click that little box, you're going to see how it changes. And if you're kind of at a corner and you click it, it'll tell you that it's going isometric versus perspective. So, yeah. So whereas Z didn't matter unless we were doing particle effects in the 2D world, Z matters inside of the 3D world. So, yeah, literally, even down to us doing movements and like character movements are gonna feel really close to what we did in 2D. Like, really, really close. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'll show you some, because some of you guys have been talking about you don't know where to get assets, or you don't know how you're going to do animations or things like that. You can import animations from any program that will do them for you. And we'll look at a couple of them, or we'll look at a couple of them that will already come, like things that will come with the animations for you, and then also how to make really simple animations inside of Unity. So I promise. One of the other things you guys mentioned was that you wished that I'd shown you more scripting. If you don't tell me what you want, I can't show it to you. Like, I had a couple days where I asked you guys, hey, if anybody wants anything, if anybody needs anything, let me know, and I'll write up a lecture, or I'll write up a video. Tell me what you guys want, and I'll do it. because this half of the semester I'm going to try and give you guys more time to work that may or may not actually work. But yeah, if you tell me, hey, I need you to go over like how to hook up a score again, or I want to program this or that or t'other, there's a good chance that multiples of you guys want that too. So I'm more than happy to show that or go through that for those that want it. So just, send me a message, send me Canvas mail. By now you guys should know I'm all pretty chill about that kind of stuff. And I'm more than happy to show you what you want. The problem is I just don't want to overload people with so much coding that they just shut down. So, and like I said previously, the second half of the course is going to be a lot of looking at tools. So we're going to look at how to build things and how to like actually level design. And the coding is going to be more on y'all. But again, coding works pretty much exactly the same. We talked about it in 2D, but the fact that, if you were adding rigid bodies to things, you had to do rigid body 2D. Now that we're in 3D, it's just going to be rigid body. It's just going to be on trigger. It's just going to be on collision. You're just going to drop that 2D. Life is easy. Sort of. Rigid bodies work a little weird. So we'll see that in, I think, next week. Okay. So, one other thing. So many of you have said you want to make a maze. Just a maze is not going to cut it. A maze with extra bells and whistles? Sure. Just a maze? No. No. Because that can be done in less than a week. Less than a day, you can set up a maze. Because of what 3D has in it, you don't have to do any work. Another thing that some of y'all mentioned was that you were afraid that making like colliders was going to be hard for complex objects. It's not. So we have mesh colliders, which will literally like cling wrap your mesh. You can also do capsule colliders and things like that, just like we did with the previous stuff, which is it's better. It's better on your system and better on the people playing it. But you do have mesh colliders. And then for terrains that are created with the Unity Terrain Editor, you have terrain colliders, which are automatically put on there for you, so you don't have to do any work with that. And then there's nav mesh, which will bake things so that say, hey, your character can only go within this bounds, so you don't even have to add like really colliders onto anything. So there's lots of ways around that. So, yeah. Okay, so anyways, we're going to switch back to GitHub, now that this is kind of talked about. So, how do we use GitHub? Well, there's a PDF for you. And there's all sorts of videos. My suggestion is always going to be to download GitHub Desktop because it's easier than just either going to the GitHub website, or those of you who are used to command line coding, command line scripting, you can command line script it to go places. I don't always suggest that because it can do things that you don't intend it to, so GitHub Desktop is pretty foolproof. It's really, really easy. So, to do that, let me move this guy over here. GitHub Desktop looks like this. Okay, it looks like this if it was a project that's already done. And, like you can see, so in this box right here, this is one that's already open, so already done. In this box over here, it's like, hey, you have changes. But you can also come over here to history, and you can see when things were added, who added what. A lot of these aren't going to look and make any sense to you, but believe me, they make lots of sense to the computer. Some of them are going to make sense because it's literally your scripts. But they're going to look... Let's see, let's find one that's going to look really weird. So this is a scene. So yeah, so it looks really weird, doesn't make any sense, but believe it or not, it's human readable. So, yeah, so you can see all the history, and you can literally be like, hey, I want to go back to this, or I want to go to this, or what you want to do. Like, you can right click and so you can revert and things like that. So things are nice. But to create a new one, another example actually is this one's more recent. These definitely look way more alien. And you get to add comments, and you should always add comments for what you've changed and what you're doing in case they need to be deleted, but it also means that you can find where things are coming from. So to create a new one, to create a repository, because that's what we're doing, we're creating a repository for our project. After you've created your initial project, you're going to go to new repository or add a local repository. So it's really kind of up to what you want to do. Add local repository is going to be the easiest one to do. And you're going to choose where it is. And you're going to navigate to wherever you have your Unity folder at. So mine's on my desktop. And it's 3D project. Select folder. And it's going to say, hey, this isn't a Git repository. Do you actually want to create one? And you're going to say, yeah, sure, let's add a repository. Add a repository. I freeze, that works here. Okay, so create the repository. Sometimes you can just click add and it's happy. Sometimes you can't. You can add your description. You can tell it whether you want to have a README file or not. You can add that in later if you want. And then git ignore. If we're lucky, there's one for Unity already here. And so what this does, what a git ignore is, a git ignore says, hey, these are the files that aren't important for everybody to know. These are the things that are specific to each person's computer, so it's not something that like absolutely has to be translated to every computer. So let's just ignore those and never ever ever like put them up to the repository, which is great because it actually saves time and it saves a lot of other things. And it's always great to have a git ignore. And then with your license, you can tell it if you want a license, or you can just say none, and then you click create repository. So I will delete this in a minute. So you click create. The repository uses git LFS, blah 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 blah. Things are good. And so now we have this. And everything's great, right? Not quite yet. We have to publish it. So you click publish this repository to GitHub, and it will automatically upload it to the cloud. Now, when you have things that need to be pulled from the cloud, like say you're working on a group, or say you're wanting to clone a repository, so get a repository from one computer to another, instead of it being a little up arrow, it's going to be a little down arrow, because you need to pull it. So that's kind of our thing. We have this idea of push and pull. So when you want to push it to the cloud, you tell it what you need to happen, and you commit it to master, and then so let's see, let's publish the repository, publish, we'll see how long this is going to take. It's going to think about it for a little bit, and so things are going to be great. Now, if we come over here, and we create a script. So now we create something new that hasn't already been in here. When we come back over to GitHub, it's going to say, hey, you created these things. Now you need to do something with them. So you're going to be like, yeah, I did. So you can say, created test script. You can put a big description. If you're working in groups, even though it's going to say who it is, the best option is to always put your initials at the beginning, just so that it's easier to see who created what. And then you're going to say, hey, commit to master. Now, committing to master means that you've committed it on the local scale. It means that you've said, yeah, this is my master repository, this is what I think needs to go up, but it's not that you've shared it to the world yet. To do that, we have to push to the origin. And once you click that, it'll take a little bit of time depending on what you're putting up there, depends on how much it is. And so now you can come back into your history and you can see you have your two different versions. So does that sort of make sense? Okay, you guys do have an assignment that will like walk you through creating a code version. So it's really short. Some of you have already done it. Yeah, you're gonna have to prove to me that you've made a GitHub account, and then you're gonna have to actually like walk through a help thing. Now, if you want to pull, let me see what I have that I can pull. Who do I have that I can pull from? You. That's still pushing. I just pulled from you. You. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Those are all. Okay, so hypothetically, if you needed to pull, it's going to see where it says fetch origin. So occasionally it's not going to, GitHub won't update as fast as, or GitHub desktop won't update as fast as somebody's pushed to an origin. So you might have to fetch the origin. And so you'll just tell it, fetch origin. It'll do its thing. If there is anything there, it'll be like, hey, pull from here, and you'll just click it to pull it. And it'll pull down to your stuff. And life is good. Life is really good. GitHub is easy to use if you understand how branches work. There are branches you can use. We do use branches because what we do is we have a master, and then we have two kind of working branches depending on what people are doing, or sometimes we have two different programmers. So our two main programmers, because I am a programmer, but I do the art more than anything else, but our two main programmers often disagree on how they should do something. So they basically have a code off in their two branches, and they're like, okay, which one works better? And then they pick the one that works better, and that's what goes in. Is it the most efficient thing? No, but it keeps them from stewing in their own anger at each other, and that works. So, yeah. So that's kind of my whole spiel on GitHub. Were there any questions about that? Okay, so if there are, you know how to find me, you know how to comment and talk to me. Please do. Those of you who have, I don't think I'm mean, but then some of you guys make it sound like I'm mean. I'm not mean. If you just ask me for things, I give them to you. So, and I'm perpetually stuck with a 1. Don't ask. I don't know why. I promise, I do look at the inbox. I do things in the inbox. So, yeah. But so, yeah, message me, talk to me. I'm cool. Like, some of you guys came after your 2D games were all done, and you're like, yeah, I had this problem and I don't know how to fix it. And we sat for 30 minutes and I fixed it. Like, all you had to do was ask me before that, and we could have had that in your final builds. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I am here for y'all. That's kind of, I get paid to be here for y'all. Speaking of which, I am teaching GameSim. I'll be the programming instructor for GameSim next semester. For those of you who are heading that way. Vicky is also teaching it, but I'll be there for that too. Okay. Oh no, if you did them, I have no idea when it's time to register. I think they said the end of October. If you already did the guides for game testing, just show me that you did them. That's fine. I forget McDougal teaches game testing now, and so he probably makes you guys do all sorts of GitHub stuff. So, yeah, no. Yeah, I had him for a few classes. He's a good guy. He didn't teach when I was there. He didn't teach game testing. But yeah, game testing. Yeah. So, yeah, no, you're not behind on registering. I think when I looked at it, it was supposed to be end of October. Yeah, if you did GitHub stuff with McDougal, just send me proof of it. That's all I need to know. Yeah, I just need to know that you guys did it. I just want to make sure that everybody has some sort of understanding of what GitHub is and how it works. Yeah, if you have the calendar for registration, that'd be great. No, GameSim is always both semesters. There's no way it could only be fall. And I definitely know it's in the spring because I'm registered to teach it. Vicky, you're not gonna email me. I don't have that kind of passion. I don't have that kind of passion. I don't have that kind of power. Like, I can't. Some of you have already figured this out. I can't physically, personally add you into a class. Vicky can. I can't. I have to go through all sorts of channels and get all sorts of communication stuff, and I can't do it personally. So yeah, when it goes up, when the guide goes up, when the registration goes up, it'll have a little message at the bottom that's like, hey, if you're taking GameSim, then email me, and it'll be for Vicky. It has not started yet. It will start, I think, if I remember right, it was the end of October. I haven't really looked at it recently, but they just finalized, for sure, the schedules for, like, the gaming department and the animation department. So yeah, so there. We have a calendar. In class. In class. So the answer to that is that 25% can be taught in class. That means that most of your classes will still be online unless your professor decides to do some of you in class. And the reality for that is if you're in MLH 200, so the one that everybody thinks of, the one at the end, you can only have 5 students in that classroom. For perspective, in 202, which is right next door, you can only have 2. So, most classes will be taught 100% online. Some of the modeling classes, what they're doing is that they're going to have one day where it's like 100% online lesson, and then the second day is going to be a lab, and you have to sign up if you want to go in to be an in-person person for one of the 5 people that can fit in that building or that room. There will be temperature checks before you're allowed to go into the building. You will have to wear a mask. You will have to do hand sanitizer. You will have to sanitize your stations. Yeah. So a lot of professors are just choosing to keep it all online. That being said, the tutoring lab will be open on campus starting next semester. It will be by appointment only. I think they're still going to try and keep some of the Zoom stuff, but it will also be on campus by appointment only. As far as the COVID-19 relief work goes, as far as I know, you're going to have to either check your email for that, or if we go to alamo.edu, and you come down, there should be... Did they change the website again? They changed the website again. Of course they did. Yeah, there should be remote services, there we go. And if you come down, there should be a, emergency student aid. So you should be able to find it through the website and FAQs as well as alamo.edu/coronavirus. Yeah, so they officially emailed y'all. Yeah, it's just a really basic form. They did officially email y'all to tell y'all that it's gonna be only 25% in class. Yeah, they sent pictures and stuff of it too. Let's see if I can find it really quick and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's see. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm really bad about deleting things. I delete at the end of the semester, but until then, I leave everything in here. Yeah, okay, so this is the one they sent you guys, which is Return to Campus for students. October 16th is when they sent it. As far as remote services, it'll be that link, and you're just going to go down to the Student Emergency Aid and CARES Act information. Yeah, it's also where you get low-cost internet and things like that. So, and we'll tell you everything else you need to know. But yeah, so they sent you this that's like, let's see. Will this make it bigger? Or will it's just gonna keep it as small? Cool. Yeah, so they sent you pictures. These are the classrooms. This is what classrooms look like. Because we use double monitors and everything, we get even less room. So, yeah. Yeah. So you will be required to wear masks. You will be required to have temperature checks. There's basically only going to be one entrance to buildings, because you're going to be required to go through temperature checks and like a COVID checklist, like do you have this, do you have that, do they have that. So, and then they may also have, because they were talking about possibly forcing the professors to also take your temperature when you got to their door. So, they are being extremely overly cautious, which is a good thing. I know a lot of us, we really want to get back. I would love to be teaching in person. I would really, really love to be teaching in person. But I am also grateful that they are not rushing it, because I live with, I myself am immune compromised, and then I live with people that are also immune compromised. So, and there's a few other professors in our department that do as well. So it's a scary, it's a scary thing. Generally you email Vicky and she'll add you in. Like, she'll just 100% add you in without you having to do anything. Yeah, I definitely, I appreciate the caution. I know for some people they think it's like way overblown. I've seen what COVID can do. I've had family members die. So I've had friends die. So it's one of those, I know how bad it can get, but I've also had friends who had it for like a week and they're like, why is this so bad? I'm fine. But I've also had the friends that had it back when it started in like March, who are still having symptoms and still having to do things. I had one that had to have a trepanation, which is where they cut a chunk out of your skull so that your brain can, like, basically leak. So yeah, it's scary stuff. It's really scary stuff. So, yeah. So it's really scary stuff, and yeah, it's got a high survive rate, but when you get it forever and ever and ever. So, and we've had our first case, or we've had the first case in the U.S. There's been multiple cases elsewhere where people have gotten it a second time now. So, and they're saying the second time is worse than the first time, that your body hasn't built up the immunities for it. So, just everybody continue to be safe and cautious. I know it sucks okay, for some of us it sucks staying home. For some of us, we're like, yay, we're in gamer heaven because we don't have to leave a single chair. But yeah, just yeah. Yeah, I remember you had it over the summer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I said, I've had people who have had it and like within a week or two they're done and things are great. But then I've also had friends die. I've had people who have had it and then just continue to have symptoms all the way through. So it's just one of those things where we don't really know how it's going to affect everybody yet, and we don't know what the long-term effects are for anybody. So, I am grateful that they're taking it serious. Yeah, some people are, especially we've had a lot of dissenting voices about that, and I get it. I get, this idea of, are we being overly cautious? But yeah. So yeah, as far as you just email Vicky. Yeah, just email Vicky. And I would probably wait until things go up, but yeah. So, and like for my family, yeah, if you need to take Game Sim next semester, when registration opens, you will email her. So, when registration opens, wait until registration opens, because she can't put you in before registration opens. So when registration opens on whatever day that is, somebody linked the schedule. Let's see. Schedule. One trimester, spring semester, first day to apply for admission. That's not what we're wanting. We're wanting registration. Classes begin. Start 2 registration begins. Last day to withdraw. Yeah, it looks like November. Okay, so this is specifically for veterans though. So this might be a little bit different. But you guys are going to be close to that. Yeah, and dates are always staggered. Yeah. So, but it'll be somewhere right around the end of December, there we go. Yeah. End of October, beginning of November. Yeah. So see, you're seeing November 9th through the 16th. Oh, cool. Veterans get to, if you're a veteran or an active military, you get to go in first. And then everybody else will go in after that. So, yeah. And, again, I tell this to people who try and get into this class, and they're like, it's full, can I get in? I may not be that nice next semester and let more people in because I got a lot of extra people this time. But there are always people who will drop because they missed the payment. And while it feels awful to steal their space, like wait for that drop, like when drop is actually going to happen, and see if people get dropped and then steal their space. Like, yes, it's awful. Yeah, so you can email her on 11/9 or 11/11, whatever works for you. Just let her know. No. It's not going to matter. You guys are treating it like this is like something that's going to be like a race to get into Game Sim. It's not. Pretty much everybody who will apply for Game Sim, she will let you in. Oh yeah, when I went to NBC, I already had 122 hours. No, I take that back. Closer to 200 hours, because I got nasty grams every semester about how I had too many hours. So yeah, no. So yeah. So that's how that's going to work. You just need to email her. So somewhere around when it starts, it's not going to be crazy. It's not going to be like registering for this class where you're fighting for a spot. It's going to basically be anybody who registers will get into Game Sim. Unless they've changed something, it's basically always been anybody who registers will get in. Or anybody who emails her will get in, as long as you meet all the requirements. So yeah, don't think of it like a... No, Portfolio is the same way. Portfolio is literally the same way. Portfolio is literally, if you need it, you sign up for it, life is good. Requirements are that you've basically finished all the classes. Like, they prefer if you've finished everything to get into Game Sim and to get into Portfolio. But they'll make special, like, if it's your last semester, if you know it's your last semester, if you think you can handle the workload, if they think you can handle, if Vicky thinks you can handle the workload, yeah, she'll put you in. So, like, we've got a couple people, I think, in this class that are actually in Game Sim right now. So, it's possible. I don't think that this is the best class to take while taking Game Sim. I have a few people in game scripting that are also taking Game Sim, so that was 100% doable. Yeah. Yeah, you should be fine then. Okay, so now that that complete detour has happened, are we ready to get back to lesson stuff? Because we got one more. One small, tiny, little thing. No, don't be sorry about it. That's, they were really good questions. I had to come up eventually. And at this point, you all know me. If you get me talking about one thing, I'm going to talk about it for forever. Okay. So the last thing we have to talk about is a thing that y'all probably all want to know about, which is, well, how do I get a model from Maya or Max into Unity? Like how do I do that? So, I have Maya open. Okay, I have Maya LT open. Maya LT is basically the baby version of Maya. It strips out all of the particles and dynamics, the renderer, and a few other things, and then limits your animations. It used to be the only version you couldn't get Maya Indie. It used to be that you only had Maya LT as an option, and yeah. So that should be a lot of the way. It looks exactly like Maya. And I'm sorry if you guys are used to Max. I don't have Max installed on this computer. I don't know why. I don't remember why I don't have Max on this computer. But I don't have Max installed, so I can't show you Max. But Max works the same way. So, I have this scene, and it can be textured, it can be untextured, it can have animations, it doesn't have to have animations, whatever you want. And each individual item, I want to go in. I don't want them to be in this, like, I want to use them all so they're at the origin. So, you could literally move them all to the origin, because here's, like, a special tip. Freezing doesn't always work correctly. So if you freeze something and then send it to Unity, there's a good chance that it's not actually at 0, 0. Like, there's a good chance it's not going to the origin. And that's just because of the way that it works and the data that it transfers. So instead, you've got to do a couple things. Or really, you've only got to do one thing. But, so I want to get all of these things to go to one place. So I want this bag of gummy worms to go as one. I want this to go as one. I want this to go as one. I want the teeny tiny treasure chest. In case you're curious, it was for a D&D scene. That's what this one that you saw at the beginning was at. It's for our character standees. It was meant to be a rogue game, a roguelike game that we were building over summer. And then that didn't happen. And then we kept doing it, and then things got complicated. Or, I mean, not really complicated, but things got shifted. So, yeah. But so, I want each of these things to go in individually. And logic says, well, we grab it, we file, we export it, we export it, we export it. Or we grab all of them and we export all. Or export selection. Or whatever. But there's a few different buttons that you can use. Now say I want to export all of these. We can go to File. You can export selection, you can export all. But the problem is still going to be your origin issue. You have this send to Unity. You have to set your Unity project. I don't 100% like this. Send to Unreal tends to work a lot better. Send to Unity doesn't work as well. The one that I do like using, however, is the game exporter. Now, and it says game exporter, but the reality is that this is great for exporting to lots of other things too. So you're going to have this window, and it's going to say, okay, so what am I wanting? Am I wanting the selection to export all, to export the object set? So we're going to say selection because I've got things selected. And then you can tell it, hey, do I want smoothing groups? Do I want the smooth mesh? Do I want, like, what do I want? And you can kind of pick what you want and what you don't. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to triangulate things. Yes, on the down low, like at the base of everything that's a quad, there's a tri. So yeah, technically in the computer it triangulates everything. But Unity reads quads without a problem. So let's just leave it at quads. If you don't have any skinning or blend shapes, or if you don't know what those are, you can unclick those in the same way that we can unclick smoothing groups. My suggestion is never to have a smooth mesh on, because a smooth mesh is literally more polys. Like, it's not tricking anybody. And then you're going to have settings, and you're going to see you have this option, export to single file. We'll export them all as one unit. But when we're talking games, we want them to each be individual pieces. Like, we want to be able to duplicate multiple cans. We want to be able to make, maybe 20 bags of gummies. We want to have this treasure chest to be able to put it all sorts of places. So we want to export it to multiple files. And then we want to move it to the origin. Like, we want to move every single piece to 0, 0, 0. Now, if you have animations, you've got to click the animation button. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about animations. And then we have this input connections, which you can have on or off. You have to choose, like I said, some places have the Y up, some places have the Z up. Unity has the Y up. And then embed media. So, there's a couple different ways that you can get textures into Unity. With FBXs, you can actually embed any material you have and tell it to go to Unity with the model. And then it's already there for you. Or you can drag and drop the same way that you do like inside of Maya or Max or Substance Painter. And then you have your options of binary or ASCII and then what type of FBX you want. Those are more personal choices. If you've had classes before where they talk about the difference between binary and ASCII is technically human readable, whereas binary is not. Binary is a smaller file type though. So when we're talking about trying to get it into a game engine, we want to go with a smaller file type. Like, that makes sense, right? We want things to be small. So, and you can even come in here and there's more settings. So then we come to the path. We find where we want it. Fall 2020. We say we want it here. We choose it. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to take and export underneath these names. So the names so these planes are going to go in as planes. But all these things that we've actually named, they're going to go in as names. So once we're done with that, there is animation clicks, there is a time editor, so for your animations you can do that kind of stuff. Again, we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Now you can say export. And down at the bottom you may have seen that it did the whole thing. We can click OK. And if we come back in over to, it's going to redo all its thing. It's going to say, hey, I've got all these things. You're going to possibly get, so I had a problem with one of the meshes. But if we come into our models, we can now drag up here. And we now have our teeny tiny itty bitty treasure chest that's at 0, 0. In the same way, if we drag our can in, it's at 0, 0. And again, this is because I put the origin at the bottom of the can. And that kind of stuff. So the one other thing that's interesting about the way that Maya and Max and Unity kind of work, specifically Maya and Unity. So we talked about it a little bit before, that each one of these squares is considered a meter. It's considered 1 meter. If you build things to scale inside of Maya, because Maya is built on meters, then there's a couple extra things that you've got to do inside of your things. So inside of here, inside of your inspector, when you click, you're going to see some new tabs that you've never seen before. The one that I'm talking about is this one that says convert units. So, old school Maya to Unity said you need to model 100 times bigger than what you would normally need it to be inside of Maya for it to go in at the correct scale in Unity. So 100 times bigger. And that tends to be something that you get taught. You get taught to do things 100 times, to model things 100 times bigger, and then scale them down. And that's because it's easier to see when something's, if you're trying to make a thimble that's teeny tiny or a needle that's teeny tiny, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to see your polys and things like that and like scroll in and out on it if it's 100 times bigger. But sometimes we build directly to scale, because to use things like Arnold lighting in anything, you have to have it to scale, otherwise it does weird things with your lighting, etc., etc. So if you have built directly to scale inside of Maya or Max, and you come in here, you need to tell it, hey, do not convert my units. And you can click apply. And now we've got a Mac Daddy of all cans because I did build it 100 times bigger. But maybe that's what we want because we need to have this kind of big thing. So, that's a really important button. And I talk about this more in other places, I promise. But basically, if you don't have any of these things, you can unclick them and apply. If you don't have a rig, you don't need to have a rig. If you don't have animations, you don't import animations. If you don't have materials, you don't import, or you use embedded, or whatever you need to have. So, that's kind of the base for that. However, when you are building your level, don't think that the first thing you have to have are your assets. So maybe you have the idea of what you want to build, and you kind of know the proportions. We looked at, I'm pretty sure you guys had an article about blocking out a level. Maybe not. I can't remember anymore where I've assigned things. So, there's this idea of gray boxing or blocking out levels. And that's where you just use rudimentary shapes that are close to what your objects are going to be. And then later on you can replace them with your assets. So, say we had a character and we know we have a character, we can say, hey, I know I have a character, so I know it's going to be a capsule. Let's just delete these guys. And we can say, I know that it's going to be... Let's zero out these guys. I know that the reality is that he's going to be... I don't know, let's make him... 1 meter's about a yard. So, let's make him 2 meters tall. So we can say, yeah, that's our character. That's what he's going to look like. He's going to be a skinny beanpole of a thing. And then we can use that until we're ready to replace it with our character. Does that make sense? Yeah, so don't think that you have to have all of your objects before you start building or start testing. In fact, we'll talk about in a couple of weeks, we'll talk about Pro Builder, which will help you, or you can go and look and stuff early, which will help you build things before you have any assets. Or it can create the assets for you. It's up to you. So, yeah. Let me make sure that there wasn't anything else I wanted to cover. Let's see. Oh, so this best practices, it's a link. And it's about performance optimization, so things that you should and shouldn't do. A lot of them are going to be common sense. Multi-million polys aren't going to be happy inside of Unity, so low polys, your character should be under 10k. You shouldn't have small objects that are over 500 poly. Optimize your polys. Optimize soft and hard edging. If you don't know what that is, either talk to the tutors or ask me questions, because I'm qualified for that too. I have degrees in both programming and the animation side, so I can help you with either way. So yeah, so this will talk about optimizing visuals, it'll talk about UI, it'll talk about graphics, memory management. This one talks about best practices for performance in scripting, so it'll talk about that kind of stuff if that's important to you. I wanted to make you aware that these you aware that these documents existed. That doesn't mean you have to use them. That doesn't mean that you're going to read them and know what they are. However, they are here for you. If things are happening incorrectly, or you're like, whoa, why is my frame rate like so bad? There's going to be some things in here that are going to help you. The things that talk about animations might help you. The things that talk about rigs might help you if you're artists. In the same way that if you come in here, some of these might be helpful for you, but might not. And again, we'll go through a lot of things, but we just don't have the time. Like, realistically, like, we don't have the time. 3D in and of itself could be taught the whole semester, and we still not have the time to cover absolutely everything. But this course has always been 2D for half of it and 3D for half of it. I don't know if it will ever change, because it tends to be easier for y'all to learn in 2D first and then switch over to 3D, but it might. I don't know. So, with that said, where did it go? What does this have? I can't remember what this one says. Okay, so there is a document here. I forgot I actually made a nice document. Wow. That will walk you through, again, everything that I've shown you are things that I've modeled. Everything that I show you tends to be things that I've done. And yeah, so this will walk through if, like, I went through it too fast. It'll walk through all the settings. It'll walk through everything that needs to be said. Yeah, it'll walk through all that stuff. And if you come down here, I've included, some of these were pre-recorded, some of these were pre-recorded, some of these were recorded during class last year. So all of the videos that you see that are me talking are things that I did last year, which I just went ahead and left for y'all so that you can see how things are done. And yeah, and that's another way that you can kind of see how scale works, is if you come over here and you add in a cube, game object, 3D object, cube. This is 1 meter. That's what the units are. 1 by 1 by 1 is a meter. It's 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. Which again, if you're used to imperial measurements, that's about a yard by a yard by a yard. So 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. If that helps. There may be a couple more things in that video that I need to talk about next time. But maybe not. I'll make sure to watch through it, because I can't. I thought I'd written down everything that I needed to, but I maybe not. So I do suggest, it's a 17-minute video, so I do suggest watching through this, just so that you can see what I do, or how I do it in a different way than what I just talked about. So, now let's talk about, I guess, the elephant in the room. Your 3D games! Yay! So now that you've finished 2D games, 3D games are the next big thing. Again, you can optionally work in groups. You have to make your own groups. You have to tell me that these groups exist. Please tell me these groups exist if they do. So that I can make sure you've got a couple extra things that you've got to do if you're doing groups, which is more or less just, submitting that you guys are working in a group, and then at the end having a questionnaire that's like, hey, did you actually work in groups? Did your group actually work? Who did the most work? Etc., etc. So, I may change a few things inside of the rubric for this one. But it won't be a whole lot. You're going to basically still have to have all this. And it's going to look a lot like what's your 2D game. The start page with the title card and start buttons. Your name, instructions, multiple in conditions. So all things that we had. Nav mesh or Unity terrain, that's brand new. And you can have either or. So one might work better for you and one might work better for you, one might not work at all for you. And I'm not saying that like you have to have, you have to walk on the Unity terrain or anything like that. Maybe it's just a background picture for one of your scenes, or it's in the background of your entire game, something like that. Whereas NavMesh is great. NavMesh will like let you walk around everything, and it means that you can have enemies that like direct to you. Literally, like they path through a maze to try and find you. So they'll auto path depending on where you are. They'll try and find the smartest way to do it. UI elements. It can be, a score, a health, a timer, energy, collectibles, pop-up text, etc., etc., etc. You guys have all pretty much done that. However, some of you did GUI programming. You do not need to GUI program your buttons. You do not need to create them via code. That is what the new Unity stuff is for. If you're using GUI dot blah 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 in your code somewhere, that is deprecated beyond belief. In the same way, if you're using application.level_load, that is gone. Most of you did not. But I can tell those of you who didn't watch the videos or didn't follow along on the UI videos or the scene switching, which was with UI, because you used GUI and application.level_load. I mentioned that they no longer exist. So yeah. So generally, I can't tell whether you guys have watched videos or not. But occasionally, because of how you code things, I can. So just know. It makes me sad. No, not really. It's up to you. It's your life. Live it how you want to. So yeah. So for this one, you will have to have a particle effect. You will have to have an animation. You will have to have sound. You'll have to have a restart and replay option. I'll have to have an exit button that doesn't require me to press the X in the window bar. And then you'll have to credit your assets. That does not mean you have to make your own 3D animation, if that's a question. You can 100% download the animation from somewhere else. I will show you places to get animations. I will show you places on how to rig your characters easily. I will show you all these things. Yeah, have a great day. Before you go, we will not be having class on Thursday, so it'll be for you guys to kind of chill out. Yeah. Oh, you can use the website version, that's fine. Yeah, you don't have to use GitHub Desktop, it doesn't matter. GitHub Desktop just makes things easier. Yeah. Is voice acting easy to make? Insofar as it's just a sound clip, so yeah, I guess so. That's a matter of you getting the voice clip that you want cut up to where you want it, and then putting it onto triggers or whatever you need to. Do we have to code it? Yes and no, depends. It's like any other sound clip. So yeah, if you want a voice to say ouch every time you get hit, then yeah, you gotta code it. Yeah. So yes, minor codes, but yes. Yeah, so all of these should look pretty similar. And you're going to notice that it's worth twice the points that your midterm was, your 2D game. This is going to go up, this point-wise, because I'm going to add a couple more things into the rubric that has to do with gameplay stuff. But It's going to look pretty much exactly the same. Or pretty close to how it was. So, and again, you guys will do playtests. You will do a final version. You will do critiques. Okay, so I think my come to Jesus talk about critiquing maybe went a little too hard, because now some of y'all are super, super crazy nice. Find something in the middle. Like, you don't have to be 100% nice. You don't have to be 100% mean. You want to be truthful, but you also, yeah. Somewhere in the middle, guys. It's okay to be kind of mean. Or, not mean per se, to be critical. Being critical is helpful, because if you don't know what you did wrong, if everybody's super nice, then you don't know how to fix it for the next time. So, the reason why you guys have Thursday off, or the reason why I'm not assigning you anything for Thursday. One, if you haven't already gone to early vote, then that's a great time to go early vote. Two, it's to give you time to work on your 3D game task list, to start figuring out what's going to be a problem, what's not going to be a problem. Start coming up with your schedule for how you want to code things, or how you want to work on things, because I hope you all learned from your 2D games what you can and can't do in the Procrastination Nation. So, yeah, I want you guys to be more... Some of you did really good. You worked every week. You could see that you worked every week. Some of you, I know you waited until the last weekend to do stuff. So, I want you guys to be cognizant of what you're doing. 3D game task lists, those should be pretty all-encompassing. Please don't just give me a list of code stuff, find art, make pretty. I want to know what every little thing is that you think you're going to have to do. Because once you break it down into the teeny tiniest, smallest steps, you guys are going to see how much work you've set up for yourself. And if you're still kind of going between your two plans, like which game plan you actually want to use, then this is a great way. If you make two different task lists, you can see how many tasks each one is going to take, and you can say, yeah, that looks doable. No, that doesn't look doable. And I will go through those probably tonight, if I have time. I'm on a deadline for another job, so I should have enough time to do those tonight for you guys. I'll go through them and I'll comment on what I think. Some of you have mentioned rhythm games. So, rhythm games are deceptively easy. If your rhythm game is something where you already have the music and you already want to make the beats, etc., then I guess. But the reality is that generally rhythm games are, one, procedurally generated, and two, they take a lot of coding, because you have to actually find where the beats are, rather than just being like, I'm a music major, I know where the beat is, or I like music, I know where that slapping beat is, So they can be more problematic, and the reality is if you want any kind of replay value, then they shouldn't have the same music every time, which then gets more and more problematic as we go on. So yes, rhythm games can be easy, because it's literally just, code this when this happens, but they can also be problematic. So, another one that some of you posted were racing games. Racing games require you to use wheel colliders and things like that, so those can also get hard to control, because you're having to worry about four wheels doing things. Yeah. If you are going to do a racing game, my suggestion is to do a time trial, not to try and make it against AI. In general, my suggestion, if you guys are doing anything, is not to try and make it like a race against AI, or to play against AI. If you've got AI that are enemies, it's fine. But actively creating a secondary player or a secondary thing makes your work doubly hard. So again, work smarter, not harder, especially while you're still learning. So yeah. So 3D game task lists. I want you guys to use Trello or Hack and Plan. Make sure your Trello is public. Two of you who have submitted, I have left comments on them because your Trellos are not public and I cannot see them. If I haven't graded it and you've turned it in, it's because it's not public. Yeah. So again, if you've never seen Trello, oh cool. But why? Okay, so if you've never seen Trello, Trello is a bunch of different boards, it's a bunch of different things. You can see, yeah. So, if we come down to, these aren't going to be that great. You can create different tasks, you can assign them to people, so if you have a group, you can assign them to people. We keep in track of like more of our coding because we've got multiple people working on coding, whereas I tend to be the only person working on art, so I just have a list and I just check things off as I go. But so yeah, so these are still a little bit on the basic side, but this is kind of what I'm asking. You need to actually say, create a new pet, keep track of pets, view pet. Like, what exactly do you need to do? Let's see, number chomp. Again, what do we need to do? What are we currently doing? What did we do? What's done? This one's probably a much better one. This says, hey, what all do we need to do? What did we decide that we weren't going to do? Where are our notes? Roadblocks, so what am I stuck on? And again, if you share this with me, I can look at it and see, hey, so you're stuck there. Okay, so let me give you a hint as to what to do to make it better. What we had finished. I mean, we finished this one. We just stopped using Trello because we're bad at that. And then, depending on who you have for different classes, some of them will talk about user stories. So, we used to do user stories, and then we decided we didn't like them. But, yeah. So things like that. So Trello's great for that. It's like having sticky notes or index cards that have all of your task list. And then Hack and Plan. Am I signed into Hack and Plan? Let's see. I like Hack and Plan. I like Hack and Plan a lot because Hack and Plan is specifically made for game design. So, oh cool. And so it breaks it down. You can break it down into code, into art, into puzzles or design. It has metrics, it has sound, it has, different things that you need to do. And then you can come over and you can switch, like you can see I've got tons and tons of things. So personal, let's see. So like this one again, we have, planned, in progress, testing, completed. If you come down to metrics, it'll tell you what's actually happened. You can see what's doing, who's doing what. Yeah. So again, it's up to you, like, what you want to use. But I want it to be, I want it to be extensive. I want you guys to actually write out what you need to do. So, yeah. Okay. So, any questions about that? About what I want for your task list? Or about what you need to create for your 3D games? Again, it can be a puzzle game, it can be a platformer, it can be a shooting game, it can be any number of things. And I'll post some of the ones that I did or that I had students do last semester for you guys to play, so that you can get some ideas of ones that did well. And yes, I will ask students permission, so if that's a question. And you'll see there's some pretty varied difference between, like, some people just did physics things, some people did action shooters, some people literally had tutorials. I'm not asking you to have a fully functioning, fully developed game. If you want to treat this as a demo or as like an intro level to something that you maybe want to build for later, or those of you who are getting ready to do game sim, maybe you want to throw your idea in the ring and you want to say, hey, so I built this for game or for level design. This I think could make a really good game if we developed it further. So maybe this is your proof of concept for that. Because game sim is a lot of everybody going, so what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And if there isn't a strong idea going in, it's a lot harder. So maybe you have an idea for that. Yeah, it's the worst. So for those of you who don't or haven't already figured out, I went through NVC, I went through GameSim, I did do GameSim, so I know. And my group, we were a fall group, so we basically had summer that we could kind of talk over, and we came up with a pretty decent thing. And then our artists took 3 months to do any kind of character concepts, any kind of concept art. They wouldn't start modeling, they wouldn't start doing anything. Once they started actually doing things, it was completely off script. The person who was supposed to be asset managing didn't do their job, so we ended up with 3 million poly, or not 3 million, 300,000 poly trees, and then a 2 million poly necklace, and so our game just plain out crashed. Things went wrong, really, really wrong. And so basically, about mid-semester, it crashed and burned. We rewrote everything and restarted the entire thing. Yeah, we restarted the whole thing. And when we turned it in, it was kind of crappy. I mean, it was something. It worked. It worked. And then, after everything was said and done, and I think the one that you guys actually use, if you use them still in game testing, is the one that kind of just works. It doesn't look so great. It doesn't work as great. But when it came time, I don't know if anybody's talked to you guys yet about the E3 competition. So basically, every year, the school can submit, if the E3 competition is still going on, you can submit one project from your school to go to E3 as a competition piece. And so we didn't think we were going to get in, so it was us, and so basically the fall and the spring semester compete against each other. And the spring semester was even more of a disaster than we were. So our group got in, so we spent 2 weeks, I spent 2 weeks remodeling, retexturing, redoing everything, and then I had 2 coders that redid all the coding, and so we basically, something that was supposed to take us 6 months, we ended up pulling out of our asses and redoing in 2 weeks. So something that we're, halfway proud of. It actually got really good reviews from the people from Blizzard and things like that, because they tend to give them out for playtesting so that you can make last minute changes and things like that. And then we made it to semifinals, so our game was this close to being in the E3 showcase. So, don't think that the bad thing you create in Game Sim is going to define you for the rest of your life, except that it will. But, yeah. 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 So, there's a good chance Game Sim will be a shit show. I'm just being honest. But you'll learn to network, you'll learn which people you like working with, which people you want to continue working with. That's kind of the studio that I now work for and work with. That's where I met all of them. Was through GameSim and through the GameSim, I think 2 after us maybe, or before us, 1 before us maybe, I don't know. That's how I met people, and that's how I've networked and I've stayed in touch with a lot of people who I went through school with. And I also have people that I did Game Sim with, and when I go to different companies, or they're like, oh yeah, we have another alum, and I'm like, oh, who is it? And I say their name, I'm like, sorry, I'm no longer taking this job. It's one of the good things about Game Sim, and plus, especially for the artists, a lot of the stuff the artists do is that you don't work as much through your degree in groups. So Game Sim is the first real major test of you guys working as a group and understanding how that works. That you've got, the one person that's a whiz at animation who does all the animations. You have the whiz at rigging. You have the whiz at textures. You've got a bunch of different modelers. Or you have the person who maybe isn't as good of a modeler, or maybe who, excels at one thing, so you stick them on that one thing for the whole semester just to kind of keep them busy. So it's kind of, it's how a mini company works, which is kind of cool. But yeah. Okay. Your other question is, which one is my Game Sim? I'm not going to tell you. You can find it out. It's easy. It's really easy to figure out, but, and if you asked, like, Vicky would tell you flat out, probably. But I'm not going to tell you. And I was there as a coder, as a programmer. I didn't do Game Sim as a modeler. I did Game Sim as a programmer. So, yeah. Okay, so other than those, the stuff that you have to do for me for this week is the 2 GitHub things. Level design rules for level designer, which are from a level designer, which is cool because it talks about like looking at things a little bit differently. And then the Unity tutorial creator kits. So creator kits are really, really cool. Some of you may have already done, I think, the puzzle one, because I think I included that one for a previous one. Watch it again. But this is basically, they're pre-built assets for Unity, and they talk about how to put them together to do things. So, like, one of them is a puzzle kit, and it's cute and fun, and it's not long. We got 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 5 minutes. It's not long. And then the other one is the one that everybody always wants to know about, is FPSs. And this will walk you through a really rudimentary, simple FPS with already built assets, already built everything for you. And this is from I think this is from their live things, so yeah, it's a good kind of start. And then, again, like I said, you guys will not have class on Thursday. That's for you guys to do with what you need to do with it. If you want to start building your games, you can start building your games. If you want to start just doing your task lists, if you want to go vote, if you need to take that to nap, whatever you need to do, let's think about this as the start of a blank slate. 2D is now gone and over with. We're now into 3D. And next week, we will be talking about moving our characters and animation. So, just like we had in 2D, we had this idea that we could move with rigid bodies and we can move without rigid bodies. There are 2 built-in function sets for how to move easily with 3D, controllers and rigid bodies. And animation is going to be easy too. We're going to talk about the same kind of animation panel that we did. We're not going to talk about the animator because we've already kind of looked at that, but we'll talk more about using the actual animation panel and importing animations. So, yeah. Any questions? All right. Then you guys know where to find me. Please do. If you're having a problem, if you need to talk to me, send me a message, send me an inbox mail, poke me on Discord. Those of you who are in the tutoring Discord have also seen occasionally I'll answer questions over there. I tend to be, again, a night owl. Yeah. So I'm here if you guys need me. Please talk to me. And, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and get off mic and leave you guys to be with whatever you want to do for the rest of the week. And I will see you on Tuesday.